Today we are driving the 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser. This is a first edition, which means it costs $76,000. The Land Cruiser starts at around 56 grand. This has every bell and whistle, every option. We've got multi-terrain select, downhill assist control, crawl control, selectable drive modes, a locking center and rear differential, disconnectable sway bar. The Land Cruiser has full-time four-wheel drive with an 8-speed automatic transmission and a 2.4-liter hybrid powertrain. This makes 326 horsepower, 465 pound-feet of torque. In today's video, we're going to be driving this on the street and giving you guys some street driving impressions. A lot of the videos that have come out on the Land Cruiser are strictly off-road because that's kind of the only place we were able to drive it on the first drive event with Toyota a few months ago. So today, we're going to talk about what this is like to drive, daily drive, and live with in my time with it this week. Let's start on the outside. This is painted in what the Monroney just says is sand. It's just kind of a brown beige. Looks pretty cool on the Land Cruiser. We've got rock sliders, standard. I believe these are frame mounted. They are. That is nice to see. 18-inch wheels with 265 70 R18 Michelin LTX trail tires. These are honestly some of the lowest grip tires I've ever tested a press car on. Tire pressures are all at placard. They just do not have a lot of traction. There is nothing really trail about them except for the lettering on the sidewall. This is probably the first thing I'd swap out on my new Land Cruiser. But it's a bigger set of tires on here. The wheels, I guess the wheels look pretty good. But yeah, definitely a disappointment here with whatever Toyota decided to go with on the standard tire. This takes premium only according to the fuel filler cap. I'm sure you could probably throw a regular in there and it'd run just fine. But this being a more premium vehicle, it does require premium fuel. We got mud flaps, a roof rack, rigid lights here, the rounded headlamps. I think this is a pretty cool looking, slightly retroified modern Land Cruiser. Of course, this is the Land Cruiser Prado in the rest of the world. It's the baby Land Cruiser. That's okay. I don't mind this coming to the United States finally. It is cool that it is being offered alongside the GX and the 4. These will all share the same TNGA-F platform, and they're all built in the same plant in Tokyo. We've already walked you guys around this, so I'll make this brief. What you need to know: this rear window opens. That's pretty cool. And because this is a hybrid, we have a much higher load floor in here than we do with the GX 550, and that is to accommodate that hybrid battery pack. So this comes up about to my waist, and it's not terrible. It's not maybe as high as the Toyota Sequoia, and it is a good size space back here, but something to consider if you are looking at the new Land Cruiser and kind of cross-shopping that with the GX. The 4Runner also shares this higher load floor because it is also a hybrid. Toyota is calling this turbocharged hybrid 4-cylinder their iForce Max. It drives like a diesel. It's got tons and tons of torque, and it has a lot of high-end power too. This engine, this powertrain, is honestly writing checks that the suspension and the tires can't quite cash. This feels overpowered, which is kind of a departure from previous Land Cruisers and Prados and GXs because they always felt a little bit underpowered. This is kind of the opposite. These mudguards are a cool touch. They're reinforced in the back so they don't flap around too much, and they've got the strap to kind of keep them in there, but if you're off-road, they do deform if you need them to. Back seat is about what we've come to expect in this body-on-frame platform. We've got grab handles on all 4 corners for all 4 passengers to help get up into the cabin. That's nice to see. We get rear climate control, a couple of USB-C ports, nice armrest, good high roof. I've got plenty of headroom and space to stretch out back here. This feels pretty good. This is my driving position at 5'10". Some nice little Land Cruiser touches in this interior. I'm liking this material on the dashboard here. And compared to the GX, I actually prefer this interior in terms of its functionality. It's a little bit easier to use, a lot more physical controls, it's a bit more utilitarian in here. Maybe not as high quality with some of the surfaces and materials, but living with it this week, it's been really easy to use. The infotainment is a nice size. CarPlay connects wirelessly. And we have physical buttons for just about everything you could need to use. Ingress and egress is easy too, even with these rock rails. Let's take a look under the hood here. Pretty impressive fuel economy numbers from this iForce Max. 22 in the city, 25 on the highway. Have I been averaging that this week? Not quite, but the fact that it's EPA rated to do so says good things for how efficient this motor is going to be. Takes 0W20 oil. You can see a lot of the hybrid componentry in the back. It all works quite well, and it is just a torque monster. Before we get started with today's drive, I would like to mention our sponsor for this video, Lewis Jewelers. Today we're wearing a Tudor Black Bay Pro, and this is actually my Tudor Black Bay Pro. I just bought this from Lewis Jewelers. Of course, I had to get it on the steel bracelet. We've got a really nice level of adjustment here with this clasp. Look at that, almost a link's worth of adjustment. I use that throughout the day to kind of tighten it up on my wrist or loosen it as my wrist swells in the summer heat. It says over a 70-hour power reserve, so I cannot wear it for a couple days and it's still running. So far, it is super accurate on the wrist, telling time really well. It's a GMT function, which I use quite a bit when I'm traveling, and I just like the look of it. I've never had a Tudor, and this is a little bit of an homage to the old Rolex Explorer. Go check out Lewis Jewelers for your next luxury watch purchase. Talk to DK and mention TheTopher, and he will take great care of you guys. Hope you guys enjoy this on the wrist in this video. Let's go in and drive this Land Cruiser. All right, we have a few different drive modes: Eco, Normal, and Sport. And those pretty much just control throttle response. I find the throttle response in Normal and Sport to actually be a little bit too aggressive, so I've mostly been driving this around in Eco mode, but we'll play around with the different modes today, and let's get started. Good visibility all the way around. That is one of the nicest things about this new Land Cruiser and the new GX550. They feel old school from behind the wheel. You're up high, you've got these nice big windows all around you. This reminds me a lot of a 100 Series Land Cruiser, to be honest. It's maybe not quite the same size, but the view and the greenhouse that you get in this cabin is really nice to have. All right, so this being a hybrid, it's going to shut off at stoplights. The engine's just going to turn off. You can coast to a stop at 0 RPM, and we have so much torque off the line. Cross traffic alert there, beeping at me. Pretty quick shifts from this 8-speed automatic, and again, not lacking in power whatsoever. We are lacking in cornering grip, however. These are very chatty tires. A few rougher shifts from this 8-speed automatic this week. This gearbox does take some time to warm up and smooth out. Honestly, it feels kind of about the same as the 10-speed auto in the GX550. I wouldn't mind just a little bit more smoothness and refinement from this transmission. Pulling out of this corner at 2,000 RPM. There is a kickdown switch at the bottom of that accelerator pedal. You never really need it, however, because this just has so much torque. You only need to drop a gear or two, and it is just off and running. Brake pedal feels good. Steering is very light. Not a lot of feedback from behind the wheel of this. brakes do feel a little bit over boosted, but the feel you get through the pedal is decent, and they do have a lot of bite. Plenty of torque fill from that Hybrid Max. Toyota does the best job integrating their hybrid powertrains into their vehicles. It's seamless, you barely notice it. I've only had one instance coming away from a dead stop this week where there was a bit of a rough start from that electric to internal combustion engine transition. The electric motor in this doesn't really have enough power to propel you forward like you do in some other Toyota hybrid products, but it does save on fuel in stop and go situations, and of course with regenerative braking. All right, let's test out the turning radius here. Pretty good. We drove this off-road and it was a treat to wheel through a tighter trail. The ride here is very soft, very squishy, and that translates to slightly sloppy handling, if I'm being honest. Comparing this to the GX460, the old GX handled better than this, and handled better than the new GX. I think the Land Cruiser is a little bit less grippy and athletic than the Lexus GX550 is. It definitely has an emphasis and focus on ride comfort and off-road capability, even though there isn't really a whole lot of ground clearance here. You pretty much have to do a lift and tires on these to go anywhere off-road in them. I suppose you can get down some moderate trails with it in stock form, and it definitely has the right running gear to get you anywhere. It just doesn't quite have the ground clearance or the right tires to do it. All the safety systems seem to work pretty well. Adaptive cruise control maintains a really nice close following distance. Lane keep assist seems to do a pretty good job keeping you centered between the lines. There is this one feature that I've been racking my brain trying to remember what it's called, but basically it will match the speed of vehicles around you and actually slow down the vehicle if you just lift off the throttle. You can actually see the brake lights come on down here in the gauge cluster. You're not touching the brake, but the vehicle's just kind of automatically slowing down. It's almost like adaptive cruise control, but outside of that cruise control setting. A lot of tire squeal. A little bit of wind noise at speed. I think this Land Cruiser makes a lot of sense under $60,000. Getting close to 80 grand though, in this spec with this first edition model, with all the bells and whistles and features, I was hoping for a little bit better on-road refinement. Namely, better handling and better grip. This is a comfortable SUV, but I feel like it should be just a little bit more athletic on the road. It has very, very low limits. The power's awesome. This doesn't really feel that much slower than the GX. If anything, it feels torquier. I think the GX has the Land Cruiser beat in the higher RPMs, and the Land Cruiser has the GX beat in the lower RPMs. At the end of the day, they both feel equally as fast in the real world. Let's put us into sport mode here, and we'll knock out a quick 0 to 60. Maybe a braking test first. See what I mean about the brakes? They work well. off the line here. It's quick. It gets out of its own way. No paddle shifters. We do have some manual control over this 8-speed auto. It definitely does not feel slow. It hustles. It gets out of its own way. A lot of body roll, a lot of squat and dive under acceleration and braking. The tires are just constantly squealing, even at normal speeds. I'm hustling a little bit right now, and it is just catastrophic understeer everywhere. I'm not sure if the alignment in this Land Cruiser is a little bit wonky or if these tires are just worn out from Car Magazine's testing it, but that's a bit worrisome. I like having physical controls and buttons on the steering wheel for cruise. That's nice. You can easily change your following distance right down here. That's projected in that both the head-up display and your gauge cluster down here. Seats are very, very comfortable. Armrests aren't ideal. This piece up here is really hard, kind of hurts my elbow when I'm resting on it. It's the right height, but it's just not very comfortable. Down here, this is nicely padded, and this is nicely padded, but they're different heights. So I'm kind of a little bit crooked sitting here, resting my arms. A little bit of road noise from that roof rack too. Some of that goes away when you close the moonroof. Overall, a pretty comfortable car to live with on a daily basis. It feels like, to me, Toyota should have done a little bit more to either make this more off-road focused with a slightly higher lift, more aggressive tires, or a little bit more athletic for street use. Instead, we have very street-oriented highway tires that have very little grip, probably less grip than a lot of all-terrains, honestly, and we don't really get a lot of ground clearance for off-road duty, even though we have all of this technology and all of this running gear to get us over trails and through obstacles with ease. So at the end of the day, I feel like a lot of people, unless if you're not going to be using your Land Cruiser for Land Cruiser things, a lot of people are going to need to go to the aftermarket to really make their vehicles trail worthy. And it would be nice if Toyota offered some options for that from the factory, especially for the money here. The 4-cylinder, the power is amazing. It does feel a little bit grainy, a little bit rough and unrefined sometimes, but for the most part, I think it achieves a nice balance of feeling utilitarian and just powerful in this more luxurious Land Cruiser package. While we're sitting here, let's do a quick sound system test with this JBL. Get a volume knob right here, and controls right here on the steering wheel. the JBL sounds pretty good. I don't really have a whole lot to compare it to versus the GX because all the Mark Levinsons that we've driven haven't been in their final stage of tuning, so they've all been pre-production vehicles, unfortunately. Overall, I'm going to say I do like driving this Land Cruiser. It's been fun to live with this week. It looks cool, it gets some attention, it feels special inside and out. I just think Toyota could have done a little bit more here, and they probably will here going forward. And if you don't mind doing a little bit more yourself, well, this is probably the vehicle for you. And the aftermarket on these is already blown up. It's pretty amazing to see what people are doing already with their Land Cruiser builds, with this only being out for a very short amount of time. So we're going to leave this video there. Looking forward to spending some more time in one of these in the future. Maybe a 1958 edition, a base model, with a little bit less features, a slightly lower MSRP. I think that might be the sweet spot with this. Love the cloth seats in that. This first edition is nice, but I'm not really sure it's worth the 20 grand over the standard Land Cruiser. You also get extra skid plates and everything on the underbody in this first edition, so I guess that is nice to have. It's just missing a lift and tires, and it would have been nice to get KDSS in this, at least at the capacity that it was in the GX 460, because that system made the truck handle so well, but also give it great articulation off-road. It was just a nice balance. And I feel like Toyota didn't quite do the same thing with the new KDSS system in the new GX. It's just a little bit roly-poly out there. It's a bit soft. So pros and cons here. This handles rough roads really, really well. Back roads, off roads, washboarding, high speed stuff, it does awesome. Our Michigan roads with all the potholes, it just soaks everything up. You just charge over it all without any reservations. That's pretty nice. But as soon as you throw this into a corner, it kind of falls apart, which is probably the biggest disappointment that I've had with it this week. All right, guys, that's gonna be it for this one. Those are my thoughts on the new Toyota Land Cruiser. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.